Welcome to First Thursdays. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's kind of a cold beginning of fall day. It's actually not that cold. It's pretty nice out there. But thank you for being here. I'm excited about the presentation today. But before we get started, I want to say a couple of thank yous to our sponsors. So big thank you to our lead sponsor, PSO, and then also thank you to Cavanta, TCC, Center for Creativity, PSO Wind Choice, Grog's Green Barn, and One Oaks. So let's give them a round of applause for their support of sustainability. Also want to introduce our new team. So we have our new sustainability coordinator, Sarah Hicks, if you'll give a wave. And if you haven't, well, maybe she stepped out of the building. I don't know. But if you'll introduce yourself to her, and if she steps back in, I'll introduce her. Sandy Sloan, who's our new events coordinator, she's waving back there. If you make sure you introduce yourself. And then I think you met Jill Maud the last couple times, but Jill Maud is our office specialist. So we're super excited to have grown. We've grown 300%. And so anyway, make a point to say hello and introduce yourself. So thank you for this great team here today. Also, just a reminder, we continue to compost. So full sun composting, if you'll give a wave back there. Little Natalie, yes, we appreciate all of her work. And then she also was reminding me that they're doing something with the Met, which is the recycling your pumpkins with the Met. And that's happening November, all of November. Is that right, Graham? Okay, and it's at, the locations are Central, Tulsa, Broken Arrow, Sand Springs, and Owasso. Those are locations. So they can bring their pumpkins to you all month, and then they get composted by Full Sun Composting. Awesome. So tell your friends about it. So thank you both, the Met and Full Sun, for offering that. There's also recycling, so make sure you put your trash in the trash bin, recycling and composting. The other thing that we do before we get started is we do a quick introduction to each other. There are people here you haven't met before, so we're going to do a 2-minute stand up, meet someone you've never met, somebody that's not talking to anybody, make sure they're talking to somebody, and we're going to do that for 2 minutes. So go introduce yourself. Sorry. Okay. You guys, again, succeed at this activity. So thank you for being so welcoming and chatty. So, okay. And it looks like Sarah Hicks did walk back into the building. Give a wave. That's Sarah Hicks in the back, our new scorecard coordinator. So make a point. If you're a part of a scorecard team or interested, definitely introduce yourself. Also, our next event will be our B2B Case for Sustainability series. That'll be at TU. And we'll see some videos of some of our high-performing scorecard members that are Bellman winners. But the focus will definitely be about creating your strategy for 2019. And we'll get to talk with all of these members and some of the things that they did this last year that was beneficial or some things that were challenging. So looking forward to that group. And that'll be at TU. So if you receive our emails, you'll get that invite. If you do not receive our emails, so make sure you sign up at the sign-in table so that you receive those. The other thing I announced last month is that we were looking for a scorecard in the school members. So we added 3 schools this year, Booker T. Washington, Union Schools, and the Met, which is an alternative school that joined us. And we're really excited about them being a part of our pilot for scorecard in the schools. If you're a part of a school and love to see them added next year, definitely reach out. We're looking at an opportunity for these children to have real-world experience around sustainability, as well as our teachers being paid for that service of teaching around sustainability. So great opportunity, but we'll keep you posted on that success. So today we're going to hear about Tulsa Parks, and it's my honor to introduce Anna America. I actually think I've known you for 3 decades now. That makes us, we met when we were 3, right? So, no, it was before we were married and children. So I've known Anna for a very long time, her family, Michael Patton, of course, and they're both, but today is about Anna, is just amazing public servants to our community. I mean, every time I watch, Anna's career, she's over here helping with trees or over here. So we're lucky to have her back with the city of Tulsa and to lead that particular program that's so important, our parks. And I, just preparing this, learned a lot more about our park system. So I'm excited to hear more what you have to say. She's truly committed to helping Tulsa be an even better place to raise her children and your families, and work toward a goal of decades for both her professional and personal life. A University of Tulsa graduate, Anna started her professional career as a newspaper reporter with the Tulsa Tribune, where among other beats, she covered City Hall and the U.S. Capitol. She worked as a journalist for several different publications and then started work with the city of Tulsa, where she did marketing and communications, first in the Public Works Department and then the Parks Department, circling back around, which sparked a lifetime love for the parks and the role that they have in shaping the community, and named your oldest child after Braden Park, one of the parks where we actually lived in that community together. She moved to the nonprofit world, where over the next decade, she served as the top executive for 3 outstanding nonprofits. First, Up With Trees, who are here with us today, and the Communities in the Schools, and then Child Abuse Network. Meanwhile, she's also begun her public service, getting elected to Tulsa School Board in 2010, and in 2014, she was elected to represent Southeast Tulsa on the Tulsa City Council. And in 2016, she was reelected without opposition and served as City Council Chair, and I think that chair is now being opened up. Her husband is looking to, Michael Patton, give a wave there, is looking to fill that seat. And also leading the largest group of women, 5 ever, to serve on a 9-member council at that time. Earlier this year, Anna was elected without opposition again, but then resigned in August because Mayor G.T. Bynum asked her to accept the role of the Parks Director. She's a proud mom of 2 children. Eva is a junior at Booker T. Washington High School, and her son Braden is a sophomore at Washington University in St. Louis. Her husband, Michael Patton, is the director of Land Legacy, an Oklahoma conservation nonprofit. Let's welcome Anna America. Right.
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We go to from beginning.
There we go, and then just, okay, great.
Let me get up here. Thank you so much, Corey.
So I'll have to get in my mode that I can look here and not keep having to turn back and figure out where I am on this. And let me make sure before I get started that this, it will work. So there we go. So as Corey said, relatively new to this, so appreciate you guys having me out here, and it's especially fun to see so many friends and acquaintances. As Corey said, we're neighbors back when we lived near Braden Park several decades ago. So I have been on the job now for about 2 months, and I've been spending most of that time so far trying to get out and reacquaint with myself. As Corey mentioned, I've worked with the city in a couple of different roles, including in the Parks Department 20 years ago, and in the mayor's office for Mayor Kathy Taylor, and then as a city councilor. But it's completely different when you are going to these parks and these facilities from the perspective of actually being responsible for them. So I've spent much of the past few weeks going out to our facilities and trying to meet all of the staff. And a lot of people are amazed to hear that I haven't done that yet, that I haven't completed it. And you'll see here in a sec, and as Corey mentioned when she was researching, she told me earlier how surprised she was. I think a lot of people don't understand the scope of what we got in Tulsa Parks. City of Tulsa Parks Department has 135 parks across the city. Then more than 8,300 acres. And among the things that are included there, we've got 6 community centers, have a variety of programs. I know a lot of you talked to a soccer coach here earlier who's coaching one of the teams, so probably goes out and plays at Whiteside. But, you know, they do day camp, open gyms, weight rooms. We are down to, we've had a number of facilities that have closed over the decades, but what we have now, East Tulsa Hicks, West Tulsa Reed, North Tulsa Lacey, Whiteside, which is kind of South Midtown, and then Central in the New Block Park area west of downtown, where we've got the arts program. Waterworks, and then Central in Centennial Park there just west of downtown, or just east of downtown. Plus 66 miles of walking trails. Most of those are not on park property, but the Parks Department has kind of become the go-to for maintenance. So our teams do maintenance on Mingo Valley, on Creek Turnpike, on Midland Valley, all of those trails. 2 skate parks, 2 dog parks. This here on the picture is probably my most often visited park in the city. It's the dog park at Hunter Park, not too far away from our house, so we're frequent visitors there. We have 4 pools, 13 water playgrounds, 17 splash pads, and 186 sports fields, 93 playgrounds, 111 tennis courts. This is Paige Belcher. Are we at Mohawk on this? 4 golf. Yeah, my husband, who can probably identify the trees because he's hit most of them at Mohawk at least. But 4 golf courses: 2 at Paige Belcher, 2 at Mohawk. 2 nature centers. This is Oxley. We were talking at the table earlier. Oxley's one of my, I rarely try to tell people what you should do, but if you haven't been to Oxley, go to Oxley. You should. And if you have kids and you haven't brought them to Oxley, A, shame on you, but B, you can make up for it by taking them out there. It's an incredible resource out there at Mohawk Park. Of course, the Tulsa Zoo out at Mohawk Park, also one of the city's facilities. We've got around 100 full-time positions in the Parks Department in 13 different work sites, plus about 60 seasonal workers in the summer who will be doing lifeguards, pools, helping out with the day camps, and of course maintenance staff. Our total annual operating budget's just under $23 million. Now we're the largest of the 3 public park systems in Tulsa. It's one of the first things when I took this job and people came up and they'd be, what about river parks, or what about this? And so a lot of people don't know those distinctions. We do have, as I said, 3. There's city parks, river parks, which is a city-county partnership, and around 1,000 acres. They oversee, a lot of that is city property, but we have a long-term lease so they can operate it as part of the river park system. Tulsa County Parks has about 800 acres, mostly outside of the city limits, but LaFortune is the big park that's within the city, and O'Brien and Chandler are just outside of the city, but serve lots and lots of Tulsans enjoy those parks. One of the things, we'll talk about first about the big parks elephant. I said 3 public park systems, and we really are all getting our brains around the fact that we really have 4 park systems now in Tulsa. So GGGP, Guthrie Green Gathering Place, and I know everybody, you would have had to have been in a hole to not be familiar with the Gathering Place. Hope you've been out to visit it. But somebody was asking earlier, kind of clarifying the public-private. You know, it was built with private funds. They have gifted it to the citizens of Tulsa through river parks, but then immediately long-term, essentially permanent management through the Kaiser Foundation funded Gathering Place. So it's privately managed and operated and programmed and all of that, even though the property, the land itself is owned by the citizens of Tulsa. And all of us, and I've met with the leaders of all of these park departments, including Gathering Place, and there's a real, I think, renewed commitment in Tulsa that all 4 of us are really see ourselves as not competing with each other, as really lifting each other and figuring out how we complement each other and can work together a lot more collaboratively and strategically moving forward. I mean, we all have the same goals. We're all serving citizens, and we all want to do that as effectively and as cost effectively as possible. So I'm excited by that synergy. I think it's good for all of us. Some of the Tulsa parks that are the most beloved and the best known, probably, I bet at least half the people in this room have done some sort of picture at Woodward Park. This used to be the go-to place for every high school senior picture or pre-prom picture and the like. And it's still, obviously, it's one of the most beautiful and beloved parks. But what is probably the better picture opportunity now, if somebody were measuring this, I think this would be one of the most here at Centennial Park because of that skyline view in the background. So this is now where my kids all get taken, you know, their senior year to do pictures. It's such a gorgeous park and such a great opportunity there, that close to downtown, which is fun. Mohawk Park is one of, it's become a real passion of mine, and I've always loved Mohawk, but I think it's if I had to pick one underappreciated gem that Tulsans, that we own, it would be Mohawk Park. 3,100 acres, and which is one of the largest urban parks in the world. Most of that is pretty natural setting. I mean, we've got a lot of facilities out there, Oxley Nature Center, the zoo, the golf course, lots of picnic shelters, playgrounds, other things, but most of the park is in a pretty natural setting. And I can't emphasize enough how rare that is that the city has managed to hold on to something like that. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later, about this is something that will be a real priority for me to make sure that we appreciate and take care of and elevate this, I think, to Tulsans to understand and appreciate what we've got there. Probably my favorite, though, of our parks are the neighborhood parks. And I hope everybody in here has some park that you see as kind of your park, your neighborhood park. This is, Corey mentioned earlier, this is Braden Park. And when my son was born 20 years ago, when I worked in the Parks Department, we lived down the street from Braden Park, as did Corey and Ski. And so we loved this park so much, we named Braden after the park. In fact, he thought, until he was about 8, he thought that the park was named after him. So he was pretty bummed when he realized that wasn't actually his park. And we'd go by and he'd see the name on the sign, and it was like, you know, my mom got a park for me. So in Braden Park, it's got this pond, which is a little bit different and is pretty cool, but there's nothing super fancy there. But this is, to me, absolutely what a neighborhood park should be. You go down there, and this is, just in this picture, you can see them. There's kids fishing. There'll be people feeding the geese, which I personally hate the geese, but that's beside the point. There'll be people playing volleyball or kicking a soccer ball around or playing in the splash pad and picnicking. I mean, and this is what, you know, the real heart of this community, what I aim for every one of our neighborhood parks is to achieve that kind of level. Now, I mentioned, Braden was born when I worked in the Parks Department 20 years ago. So it's interesting to come back 20 years ago and see the pretty dramatic changes that we have seen in just those 2 decades. When I worked in the Parks Department last, we had 22 community centers instead of 6 that we have now. We had 9 swimming pools. We have less than half that now. We had more than twice as many full-time employees, more than twice as many seasonal employees. And for a whole lot of reasons, some of which I was involved in on a policy side, honestly, but Parks has taken hit after hit after hit in terms of budget cuts over the years. You know, in times when we went through the recession in 2009 and the like, it becomes an easy target. Frankly, people in Parks are nice people. It tends to bring in nice people, so they didn't go toe-to-toe and talk like, the city's gonna, a public safety crisis or something if you do cuts. So they've taken a lot of cuts. And it shows. As I mentioned, I've gone around and I've been to all of our facilities. This is Hicks Recreation Center. Every single Parks building that I've been in over the past couple of weeks has leaks in the roof. And I was shocked, I will say. And this isn't like some storage room. This is a room that is used regularly for programming and crafts out at Hicks. And this is the level that we've got. When I was out there, it was another one of these where, kind of like this weekend where we knew rain was coming. So they had this elaborate setup in the hallways where they'd have like a mop bucket with a trash can lid on top and some sponges because they knew where all these leaks were going to come through, trying to catch the water. We have an estimated, I've been working hard in the last 2 months putting together a CIP list with my staff, which is the capital improvement list and where we need. We're estimating almost $20 million necessary to do just roof upgrades and replacement, security system, HVAC, electrical, and things like that. Very basic things that, frankly, should have been done all along. It should be embarrassing to all of us that we've let our own facilities get in this shape. This is Whiteside. I know, because I've seen some of the people in here. You've probably had your kids out here playing at Whiteside. When this first went in, this was such a fun playground, and the kids, I mean, they loved it. It was so colorful there at 41st and Pittsburgh. This is what it looks like now. This is representative of all the playground things here. We've got almost 13 million identified in upgrade and renovating outdoor park play amenities, fitness equipment, splash pads, playgrounds, things like this. This is one of our fine tennis courts. I mentioned we had about 111 tennis courts. And I'll tell you, 10 million that we've identified right now, that's not even going to get to all of them, but this is what happens when you don't take care of tennis courts on a regular basis. So our goal will be, we believe that a lot of those can be converted to other uses. I walked out of a meeting on pickleball, and if you don't play pickleball, you probably will soon because it's very, very, very popular. And so we'll be converting more tennis courts. We've done that with some to pickleball and maybe looking at some other things like futsal and some other things that would be higher use. And we have more than 10 million needed to renovate other sports fields, lots of issues at the golf courses that have been ignored over the years. So one of the things people have asked me about is, what's your vision, what's your plan? And it's too early, I think, to say we have a real complete vision. And as I said, I haven't even gotten out to all the facilities yet. But I've been able, just in the time we've done and meeting with the staff and lots of discussions with members of the community, a couple of real clear priorities that we'll be working on over the next few years. Number one, absolutely, this has got to be, for us in particular, I hope for the city as a whole, we've got to take better care of what we've got. So we're working right now within the city on Improve Our Tulsa, which will be the next capital improvement package, the renewal of that. And I'll be making a very significant ask on behalf of Parks. Chances are I won't get all of it. That's kind of how the system works. But I'm hoping that we really can go in there and make clear how important this is. And I think because as I've gone out, I've taken pictures on my phone every place I go and send them back to people. That's part of, I think, helping everybody understand when we look at building new things, we've got to be more transparent with ourselves, frankly, not just with taxpayers, but to say, hey, it's exciting, it's fun and exciting to build this new thing, but let's make sure we understand and fully disclose and commit to the funding that will be necessary for maintenance and for operations. And we have done a poor job at that as a city. And Mayor Bynum, I think, is very, very cognizant of that and is very committed to that. So that's going to be big. Number two, I'd like to stop and reverse eventually the trend of closing centers and pools. As I mentioned, Parks has gone through dramatic cuts, and because of that, had to really radically kind of shift how some things have been done. But I would, particularly in areas where we've got lots of youth, low income, kids need safe, positive opportunities to get out and be active and be engaged. This picture is from my last visit to a center. I mentioned 6 centers. I didn't mention this center. This is Chamberlain, which is the farthest north center in the city, 49th Street North and Frankfurt. And in 2014, Mayor Bartlett at the time proposed closing Chamberlain, and the city council said no. And one of the prerogatives over this budget, rearranged the budget and put funding in to have 2 temporary part-time workers keep Chamberlain open basically a couple of hours a day. And that's how it's been for the last few years. And we really are basically putting no additional money for custodial, for supplies, for equipment, for anything else. These temp workers have been keeping it open. When I went out there and visited, so this young man on the left in the picture on my right when I got there right after school, and he came running in. I was talking to the temp worker who's managing it, and he said, "Is the gym open today?" And she said, "Yeah." And the look on his face, I mean, he was just so excited and gleeful. So, oh, great. So he runs, get his tennis shoes on to come play play basketball. These kids are all basketball fanatics. So I talked to all the kids I saw out there, and I said, what could we do? What could the city do to make this park be what you really want? He said, just be open more. I love it here, but I want to come over here every day, and I can't come every day. Some of the other kids said, can you fix the broken stuff? We get stuff that gets broken, and it doesn't get fixed for a long, long time. I talked to a couple of high schoolers who came in later, and they were seniors. These guys are Gilcrease, I think. In fact, one of them had a shirt on, so that probably tells you. I talked to the McLean. It's pretty close to McLean, and these kids were McLean seniors. And I asked them what we could do. And you could tell, first of all, they were surprised someone was asking them. And they said, and again, that look, though, on their face of like, this matters. And they said, we really want to be on a basketball team. Could you just make a basketball team? And I thought, these kids, they didn't ask us for big investments. They didn't ask for fancy stuff. We should be giving them what they ask for. And I mean, we, the park department, we, this community, that they deserve that. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to reopen Chamberlain. It will be one of my priorities this next year. And look at longer term. I think that we do need to consider growing in East Tulsa. It's wildly underserved, and it's where we have the largest growth. So I'm hoping we can evaluate in a few years, maybe adding a center there. I mentioned Mohawk, Revive Mohawk. When I went out and toured Mohawk, I came back and I made a post on Facebook, and I had all these people comment on it. Everybody said, "Oh, I love Mohawk. I used to go to concerts there." Probably half the people, it turns out half my friends apparently went to Huey Lewis and the News concert at Mohawk. So that's way more people than probably actually fit out there. I used to go to the powwow. Used to be the site of the biggest powwow in the region out at Mohawk. I used to do paddle boats. They used to have paddle boats out there. I used to horseback ride. We used to have stables. We used to have the mounted patrol. All of these things that used to happen in Mohawk, and over the years, as we have run out of money, we've gated off more and more in that park. We've stopped doing events. We have closed off all these things. So nobody said, I used to do that, but Mohawk, I don't like it anymore. It's just sort of fallen by the way, we've stopped offering it. So I think this is something that we really need to focus on. I will be asking for money in Improve Our Tulsa to repair and renovate the existing trails. It's one of the very few places in this area where you can do this kind of horseback riding, where it's not just running around a field, but you can go out and see deer and see other things, go through some really beautiful settings. And then Lake Sherry, which is a wonderful bird watching area out there that's wild. I mean, there's benches and stuff there that are so overgrown you can't even tell there's benches because the maintenance has fallen so far by the wayside. And the incredible WPA buildings out there too. So we're hoping that we can preserve and protect those. My fourth goal, better engage our communities. And that's a whole lot of things. It's more programming and working with those neighborhoods on the parks, better signage. We're looking at redoing all of our signage to make it clear, to help people understand, what we're trying to communicate. Just better communication overall. Making sure the facilities are safe and accessible and lighted and all those pieces. We can build a wonderful park, but if people don't feel safe going there because of crime or lighting or loose dogs or whatever that issue is, that we're not delivering what we need to in terms of a park. Marcy and I here with who's in charge of our recreation programs on staff, we've been in some meetings and are really working to figure out how we can be more effective in reaching out to immigrant and other underserved communities. So I think these will be real priorities for us. This is going to be a big one, increased sponsorship and partnership opportunities. It's something we, for whatever reason, just have not tapped into well in Tulsa Parks. We haven't really had a vehicle. We got an incredibly generous philanthropic community here, and we need to take advantage of that generosity. But I don't want that ever to become seen as the solution, because it's not by itself. They can enhance and improve and support, but this community needs to fund the basics of parks. So we absolutely need more public investment in our parks. This is, and it's hard to see on this, it's kind of worth, if you're interested in these kind of things, going to their website and looking up. So one kind of an overarching goal, I think, for me, and I know will be for the mayor, we've had a lot of discussions about this, is just ensuring that all Tulsans have access to a great park. So this is the Trust for Public Land does a thing every year, they call it Park Score, and they measure the access to parks. Their goal is a 10-minute walk, that everybody in America should have a 10-minute walk to a great park. And this kind of shows you in Tulsa, it's not always where you think that we have those lacks, but the red spots on there are areas where it's very high need, where you could have a lot of impact. But currently, about 55% of Tulsans are within a 10-minute walk to a park. So there's a long way to go to get closer to where we want to get. This is, and I know you won't be able to read all these, but it's, as I said, you can go to their website if you're interested. There's kind of just some shows where we rank compared to other communities. Overall, in 2018, we were 60th out of the top 100 cities, so that's something we definitely want to see ourselves moving up in there in terms of the services and amenities we provide our citizens. We know that this investment, I mean, there's tons of data, all kinds of data that show that you get a good return on this investment. I mean, there's an economic benefit. Parks make cities more prosperous. They increase property value. They attract homeowners, businesses, employees. It's one of the things when people go to a city and deciding do they want to live or move to the city, green space and parks and things like that matter. They really do. They make a neighborhood safer, especially when you're doing it right and you have lighting and you have those things. When you get communities that connect to those parks and look out for those parks, there's a real measurable impact on safety. The Citizens Healthier, which is the one we think of most, and it is probably the strongest benefit. Obviously, the environmental benefits are huge. The air and water quality issues and all of that, but I mean, it's also reduced stress and sort of indirect benefits. But it's also the best opportunity to get you out, get active, get exercising, run, walk, bike, do whatever it is you want to do to get out there and be active. I described when I took this job, it was kind of a lifetime. I mean, this really is, I couldn't have asked for a better dream job for me, the way that I feel about parks. And I couldn't have asked for a better time to get this. We were talking a little bit earlier about the gathering place with Corey, and I were talking about that and what people, say, what do you think about that? And coming from the nonprofit world, and I'm sure there's people in this room who have gone through the same thing, they sucked up a lot of energy and a lot of money over the past few years, and they will for a while. So there's that like, oh, is everybody going to go there? Are they going to, everybody who wants to go to a park or anybody who wants to donate to a park, is it all going to go to the gathering place? And maybe I'm an optimist, but I really believed, and what I have seen so far is kind of the opposite. Not that they definitely are there's a lot of resources going into it, but I think there are people who've gone out to the gathering place who went out and played, who probably haven't gone out and played as a family or as a couple or just by themselves in years. And I think you're seeing people who say, this is fun. I forgot that it's fun to get out and do these things. And that we are now seeing sort of a greater community-wide appreciation and support for parks. And I think that'll be something I believe and I hope will continue to grow. To be at a time, I think, when we have a mayor, and I hope a council, although it may all change in a few weeks, but we've got a community that really is park-friendly and park-supportive as we've ever had. We really are a city of parks. I mean, these just fabulous, unique, diverse, really special parks. And I think that's something we should own that. We should brag about that. We should be proud of that, and we've got to live up to that. So I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm happy to answer any questions or anything else that you have specifically about parks. Thanks. Sure. Yeah, and you just tell me when to shut up, Corey.
No, you're good. And right before we do that, there's a black Honda, that has its lights on. It's over in this lot. So if that is your car, your lights are on. And I have the license plate if you need that. So, and before we do questions, let's just make sure we hear just briefly from the other folks over here up with trees, and if you have more to say about Tulsa Parks and Tulsa Zoo, and then we'll do questions. How's that? Do you have? Okay, she covered
Yeah,
it. Okay.
if later, if you have questions about any, Marcy is over all of our rec programs, sport programs, whatever. So if you have any questions or anything, she'd be happy to be a resource as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Taylor. I'm the program director for Up with Trees. Lots of familiar faces in the room today. If you're not familiar with what we do, we are the wooden signs along the highway. We've planted over 32,000 trees for Tulsa in parks and schools, along highways. And there's lots of ways to get involved. Planting season just kicked off, so if you want to stay tuned with all of the upcoming events we have, feel free to sign in here. I also have some upcoming event cards with some classes coming up too, if you want to take one of those home. And I will pass this along.
Hello, I'm Rick Katarski. I'm the curator of wildlife, curator of conservation and scientific advancement at the Tulsa Zoo. And of course, we've been out at Mohawk Park since about 1927, so come out and see us. I'm with Anna. Anna, I'm sorry. It's very underutilized. We've been out there many years, and it has so much potential. I didn't see Huey Lewis in the news, but I saw Stone Temple Pilots at Mohawk Park years ago. But so yeah, we just winded down the Halloween, and now we're gearing up for breakfast with Santa for the Christmas time. And the table here today is just about the latest and greatest project. We just finished Lost Kingdom Asia last summer, and now we're working towards a new Africa area that will be similar to the Asia area, but just with Africa species. So come over here and find out information about that.
Thank you. And he also brought a bat box for the drawing at the end of the, and lots of information about that. And Anna brought something also from Tulsa Parks. So, yeah, if you have any questions, raise your, we've got one right there.
Thank you. First of all, Anna, thank you so much for giving your time and considerable expertise and energy to this project. It is so needed, and I thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
I live 2 blocks from New Block Park, a park with a lot of acreage. There's a waterworks facility there, a picnic shelter, some playground equipment, and a multi-use path. But most of it is just open space. I love walking down there and using that space. In the previous administration, I heard some talk about selling off parts of that park, or large parts of it, for commercial development. And it seems like always such a good idea to hang on to our green spaces as much as we can. Can you address that?
Well, I am not familiar with the specific proposals at New Block, so I don't want to act as if I am. In general and very broadly, absolutely, I am not coming in with any mindset that we will ever sell or develop parks. I'll say I am looking at a number of parks at different kind of uses that might bring some, and I'll use as a model Guthrie Green, the development that you have in Guthrie Green with the up where the building, I guess, is, and a little bit restaurant. So we're looking at some potential kind of partnerships at a couple of our more urban parks that would maybe bring some of that kind of retail that would be very focused on park users. So I think there's some ways that we can do some things like that will help bring in some revenue, but that's not really the real goal. I think it'll bring in usage and allow people to use them in different ways. I think we want to, when I talked about I want every Tulsan to have access to a great park, I want that to be some specific things, but part of that is just green space. Part of it's just getting out there and having some place where you can, it may be sitting by a fountain somewhere, maybe walking through a trail, maybe just, sitting leaning against a tree, but those have very high value in a community, and we shouldn't underappreciate that. So I definitely want to protect and maintain You know, there may be some instance, I mean, we've got some parks that people who are like, that wasn't a park. The map tells you it's a park, and it's essentially a, you know, concrete pad someplace or something. But yeah, and I don't think there's any plans. I haven't heard anything about New Block, and I wouldn't support that without some really, really great proposal that we thought was an enhancement overall. Any other questions? Oh, lots. Okay.
Excellent talk, Anna.
Thank you.
In fact, I think you raised the bar for your husband. We'll leave that one alone. I love how Sustainable Tulsa puts together a people, planet, profit, and you talked about that or illustrated that with your talk. So especially getting corporate, business, private sponsors, because I think we all know, but maybe don't really realize how important it is of the investment in our green spaces. The parks really brings in business, brings in jobs. And you can't look at deferred maintenance in that way of saying, okay, that was the past, it'll keep going. So I want to applaud you for doing that and putting up those signs where corporations, sponsors can have that maybe recognition, and then Sustainable Tulsa helping getting that out. I take my college students to Redbud Valley, Oxley Nature Center, Tulsa Zoo, Mohawk Park, and more. And it's extremely valuable. I think there's a lot of hidden value that people, again, it's getting that word out that you already said. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there. Hi.
Oh. I was watching that mic. I was like, but her lips aren't moving. That is so weird.
I know, right? Hello, this is God. I don't know. Anyways, I'm Ashley Bath, and I'm with the Tulsa Young Professional Sustainability Crew.
Awesome.
And I also just love Sustainable Tulsa so much. Everybody knows that. To kind of continue along that theme of balancing people, profit, planet, as we know, a lot of sustainability practices can help save money, but they also are really wonderful for our environment.
Right.
Can you speak to any sustainability practices that you're either doing currently or plan to kind of do in the future to help really bring about and balance that like planet piece, any like energy saving or waste management or anything around sustainability practices that go into park management?
I don't think there's probably more than I am not aware of, and frankly, it's probably been mostly just driven by the economics of it. So we have some of the greatest natural resources in the city and some of the people who are best trained, especially at Oxley Nature Center and Redbud. So there is some very specific from that side of things, from the preserving not just green space, but very specific space that provides habitat and water quality management at Mohawk. Some of you may be aware, maybe not, but Mohawk is almost entirely in floodplain, so a lot of what happens out there, that has to be factored into, the impact on water flow and water quality and how it all feeds together. Had a conversation with Corey prior to speaking about what we can do on that element to look at the scorecard, because I don't know that we have. I mean, probably at the rec centers it hasn't been a priority, but we've already talked about how we can help facilitate that and make sure in our park facilities. Now, admittedly, fixing the roof is going to be the highest priority on those things, but what can we do to make sure that we're the same kind of responsible stewards of the space where we have our buildings in our space as we are in the green space and the more obvious natural settings that we maintain across the city. Yep, okay. Now your lips are moving, okay.
Okay. Hi, Anna. Kim Shannon. I come at this question and comment kind of for, twofold. I'm a former president of the Oxley Nature Center board, and not currently doing that, but I also live in Mohawk Park. And so over the years, as fewer and fewer people use Mohawk on a regular basis, I remember listening to the powwows from my house at night. It was always very amazing. But it's one of those things that in the natural world, in a park setting, if you don't, or if you aren't familiar with something and appreciate it, you can't love it and protect it. So I look forward to Mohawk being a focus and getting more people out there to love it and protect it, because I think this will lead directly to this. The park needs some security help. I call the police on a regular basis about people who just blatantly decide not to read the signs and adhere to things and drive wherever they want, and just make a mess of things. The more people care, I think the less kind of that problem we'll have.
Yep, absolutely.
Yay, Anna.
Thanks. Yeah, are you next? Yeah, go ahead.
Your goal number 5 was to increase citizens' involvement, and I think you call it public cooperative programs and so forth. What's your practical vision as far as incorporating civic organizations, businesses, churches, schools, TCC, other groups to be able to provide services without a cost to the community?
Well, so that's going to be a longer-term process, and I think it involves. You guys may have seen some of the news over the years, as like we've closed some rec centers and they've met with groups. So through the mayor and the council had kind of a mini strategic planning session right before I took this job, and one of the things we outlined as a priority for the city there was to help kind of come up with a pyramid, was the phrase and the shape we used, but to evaluate how we want to, and I'll use playgrounds. I think everybody would agree, high public good. We don't expect them to self-support at all. We don't expect, kids to clean up the playground in order to earn slide time or anything. So that's high public good, should be completely subsidized, and it's good for the community as a whole, up to, a private yoga session. We may decide to offer programs like that, but I think almost everybody would agree we want that to be self-supporting. And, we may be the best venue for that, but we don't necessarily as taxpayers want to say, yeah, we're going to subsidize that. So we've got to go through that process internally to help really kind of figure out what are the community goals. So right now we're in a ton of some existing agreements, some proposed for a lot of sports groups that are saying, we want to come in, we'll maintain this field, but then we want this field to be completely for our club's use for whatever that sport is. And that's just one example. And a lot of those decisions have been made kind of individually as they come up. And so we want to back up a little bit and do some strategic thinking about what's the best way that serves the community. And then I think with that framework, it'll help a lot, because then we can come back in and say, hey, we've got a niche here, after school programming, I'll say, and I'm making that up. And we think that there is a real high public good. We have limited resources. Maybe we can put some of that in, but reach out to partners within the community to develop that. That might be an example. Or I left a meeting and came here, and we were talking about expanding. I mentioned, I think earlier, pickleball. But, there's no pickleball league in Tulsa. So, okay, what can we do to work with private? The folks who were in this meeting said, they'd be willing to help raise money to build more pickleball courts and to help organize. So there's going to be lots and lots of synergy, but you've got to kind of create the framework of what our goals are. What I don't want to do is to continue to do kind of one-on-one decisions each time and then not have a broader strategic plan that figures out. And then a lot of that will be just coming out and asking people for their support. I will be honest, on Chamberlain, after I went out there, I've reached out to some groups already about, hey, can you help us get some equipment and maybe do some support to get that started, expanding the services out at Chamberlain, for example.
I have a question. This is not trying to put you on the spot, but just to raise it, because it's a perennial question. That is park consolidation or unification, or I don't know.
City county, you mean?
Park, city county, and also, the whole thing with the gathering place. Initially, there was pushback, like, how can this thing be maintained? You've spoken candidly about capital improvements, but ultimately, when the staff has been cut, operating funds are in short supplies. I've heard arguments back and forth about consolidation with the county, whether or not that's really viable, but the idea to get an earmarked funding source for parks, and there's the stormwater system and the soccer fields. I mean, there's a lot of, and you mentioned the trails on creeks and highways. I mean, I think the time might be right to look at a dedicated tax. The nice thing about the county is they could potentially be tied to property tax and get it out of the sales tax ongoing
Right.
squeeze. So I just,
Yeah,
I
so-
don't expect you to go
No, but
down
you-
on the line, but just what do you
You
think?
nailed the number one reason, and some of you may know, I mean, the mayor had created a city-county parks task force that I chaired over this last summer, and then we kind of put that on hold for a variety of reasons. But the number one reason that that's even something the city would look at, other than you should look at it anyway, hey, can we do things more efficiently, is because, yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that, but I feel like I've said this to every person in Tulsa at one point or the other, but, we are the only state where cities have to rely on sales tax. It's an incredible, incredible limitation on us. And when people say, why can LaFortune take better care of their why can they mow more often than you can? It's because, yeah, they got property tax. They get millage, straight millage. It is sustainable, it's steady, sales tax is regressive, it's volatile, and we're already high on sales tax, so nobody's going to support raising it. Anyway, I think, at least for now, unless something really changes in state law, we realize structurally there's not a way to tap into that for the city facilities. And city and county have very different missions overall. They've got one big destination park. We have 135, and we see neighborhood and community parks as a huge part of what we do. I do think there will be lots more opportunities, and we're going to try to explore those on how can we be more collaborative for sure. And maybe there may be, there may be down the road where we create, say, don't go back and say I said we were doing this. I'm making this up as an example, but they have 3 golf courses, we have 4. Maybe we can form like a golf authority and do some governing and some financing and some other things collaboratively, because they're very similar in mission, those golf courses. So I think we'll look for a lot of those and continue to look for, and I think a couple people have mentioned, I see as essential long term, we've got to get some sort of dedicated funding that goes to parks and greenways in the city. We just have to. I mentioned we've got 66 miles of trails we're absorbing. We haven't gotten one additional staff person or dollar to do that. And another 10 miles of trails are expected to come online over the next 1 to 3 years. And we have just done a lot of things in the city and as a community where it's kind of like, oh, that's awesome, let's buy that, build that, do whatever, take that grant without thinking through what's the smartest way to take care of it and manage it and all that. So you're lucky. We as a community are lucky. We've got some people right now in leadership roles who are real focused on that, on how can we collaborate smarter. And people have said that for a long time, but it's actually happening now for the first time, I think, in many years.
Are there any other questions?
Yep. Feel free to, grab me afterward if you have a question or anything you want to follow up on, or Marcy or anybody else here, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, and we have a couple gifts. So the Parks Department has a mug and a little T-shirt, and we also have a bat box that was brought by Rick with the zoo. So this first one, maybe you pick, and yeah, sure. Okay. This will be for the parks treat here. Oh, they just left.
This person left?
I think yes. Okay.
So does that mean he has to be present to win?
Yeah,
No,
you have to be present to win. Yeah.
Gotta stick around.
I think so. I think there's a, yes.
Carolyn back?
All right.
Woohoo!
Come on down. All right.
Oh yeah, there. You're there.
All right. And then one more for the all right. Supporters. Yay. All right. One more here.
Yeah, it's pretty sad that I have to put my glasses on to read the card. So.
Okay.
Oh, and it's a pretty card. Huh? Oh, Larry Mitchell. There you are.
All right. Okay.
I was starting to go, who's Mitchell Management? Oh, but.
All right. Well, thank you again. I think, Anna, you can stick around for a little bit if people have some other questions, but go out there and be sustainable and go outside. All right. We'll see you next month.